Picture this: an immigrant hiding millions in gold and silver under crates of vegetables, desperately trying to save his business from a burning city. Sounds like a movie, right? Well, that's actually the incredible underdog story that birthed what is now the world's largest private bank. In today's Explainer, we're diving straight into the wild evolution of Bank of America. We'll see how a humble institution, literally built on personal trust, morphed into this colossal, heavily bureaucratic corporate empire.
So here's our roadmap for this century-long saga. First, we'll look at the immigrants' banking empire, then an all-out war on Wall Street, followed by the boom, bust, and betrayal of the mid-century, and finally, we'll examine the modern financial behemoth.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, the immigrants' banking empire. Now, Amadeo Giannini's childhood in California was definitely not your average upbringing. Tragically, when he was just 7 years old, his father was shot dead during a labor dispute. That kind of trauma forces you to grow up fast, and he certainly did. He became the bookkeeper for his family's farming business, and by 21, he was running the whole show. We're talking grueling 18-hour days. He'd even skip lunch because to him, it was just a waste of time, and it paid off. He quickly transformed that farming venture into a massively successful grocery business in San Francisco.
But here's the crazy part. Right at the height of his success, at just 31 years old, he actually retires from the grocery game. He'd inherited some wealth and local bank stock, but taking a closer look at the industry, he realized it was completely rigged. Giannini was absolutely outraged. He saw how existing banks totally neglected the working-class Italian citizens and immigrants of San Francisco. A lot of these folks barely spoke English and were just completely shut out by the financial elite. So, what does he do? He founds his own bank, the Bank of Italy. And the whole premise? Providing loans to the working class based strictly on personal trust. A real handshake deal kind of place.
And that trust? It was put to the ultimate test during the devastating 1906 San Francisco earthquake. As massive fires are just consuming the city, Giannini and his stepfather do something incredible. They load all the bank's cash, gold, and silver onto wagons, cleverly hide the whole fortune under crates of produce, and literally escape through the night right before the flames swallow his vault. But he didn't just hide. Over the next few days, while other bankers were absolutely terrified to open their doors, Giannini sets up a makeshift desk right there on the street. He immediately starts offering unsecured loans to help people rebuild, relying 100% on his gut judgment of their character. This bold move basically cemented his bank as the most trustworthy institution in the entire region.
Which brings us to Part 2, War on Wall Street. Giannini's ambition didn't just stop at California. He knew that to build a true global banking empire, he had to take on the most prestigious financial hub in the world, New York. But stepping into New York meant a direct clash with the undisputed king of Wall Street.
And wow, the contrast between these two guys is just night and day. On one side, we've got our scrappy underdog, Amadeo Giannini, a West Coast immigrant living a modest life, building a business on pure trust and character. On the flip side, J.P. Morgan Jr., pure Wall Street royalty. Inherited wealth, massive power, and just like his famously ruthless father, he absolutely despised competition. So when Giannini expands into New York by merging several banks to form the Bank of America National Association, Morgan takes it as a literal declaration of war. Morgan unleashes his immense influence, launching these aggressive smear campaigns and instructing his networks to just totally crush the stocks of Giannini's banks.
To fight back, Giannini creates a holding company called Transamerica Corporation, hoping to consolidate and protect his growing empire. But then, 1929 happens. The devastating Black Tuesday stock market crash hits, stock values absolutely plummet, and we see massive bank runs. Giannini is desperately trying to prop up his company by buying dumped shares, but the market chaos is just way too intense. Sensing blood in the water, Morgan and his allies swoop in for the kill. They orchestrate this massive secret boardroom coup, actually plotting with Transamerica's very own executives. Completely cornered, Giannini is forced out of the very company he built from scratch.
But come on, you really can't keep a guy like Giannini down for long. Refusing to just roll over, he launches an absolutely epic proxy fight. He goes straight to the everyday, regular stockholders. He leverages that stellar, honest reputation he built on the West Coast, which was a total breath of fresh air compared to the ruthless Wall Street elites. And guess what? It works. At the shareholder meeting, he wins majority support, triumphantly snatches back control of his company, and immediately fires every single Morgan loyalist from the board. Talk about the ultimate underdog victory over the Wall Street machine.
Moving right along to Part 3, Boom, Bust, and Betrayal. Back in the driver's seat, Gianni completely revitalizes the bank.
When World War II kicks off, the entire banking industry, Bank of America included, helps finance America's shift into this massive war machine. By 1945, Bank of America isn't just big, it is the largest commercial bank in the entire world.
Having achieved his ultimate vision, Giannini finally retires. And here is a number that will blow your mind. When he passed away in 1949, his personal estate was valued at precisely $489,278. Just think about that. Compare a net worth of under $500,000 to the absolute juggernaut of an institution he left behind, $6 billion in assets spread across 517 branches. Despite literally creating the largest private bank on the planet, he chose to live modestly, pouring a huge chunk of his wealth into education and research. It's a vivid reminder of his absolute, lifelong commitment to the common man over personal greed.
However, the post-Giannini era brought in a completely different corporate culture. We're talking a wild mix of massive innovation, but also deep institutional rot. In the 1950s, CEO S. Clark Bass rides the post-war economic boom and launches the Bank America card. This was huge. It brought early credit cards to millions and totally revolutionized how we spend money. But as the bank swells into this giant bureaucratic maze, it gets complacent. Fast forward to the 1970s under Tom Clausen, and the bank actually loses its top spot to Citibank, who had been heavily investing in new tech like ATMs. To hide these struggles before he retired, Clausen resorted to aggressive, though technically legal, accounting tricks just to artificially pump up earnings. He then drops this massive, hidden mess right into the lap of his successor, Sam Armacost, in the 1980s. Armacost then oversees a disastrous $95 million mortgage securities crisis, built on straight-up fraudulent appraisals, which absolutely tanks the bank's reputation.
So now, plagued by these massive crises, third-world debt issues, and a total mess in management, the bank's stock is in free fall. And you know what happens when a giant is bleeding? The predators start circling. Ruthless corporate takeover specialists like Sandy Weil saw a golden opportunity. Weil attempts a hostile takeover. This is where one company aggressively tries to seize control of another, completely against the wishes of its current management. His goal? Just gut the costs and remake the struggling giant in his own image.
To fend off this attack, the board brings Clausen back out of retirement, and Clausen deploys a brilliant, almost ruthless financial maneuver known as a poison pill. Essentially, the bank suddenly floods the market with new shares for its existing shareholders. This instantly dilutes the ownership percentage of any potential buyer. It made a takeover vastly more expensive and completely ruined the deal for Sandy Weil. The defense actually worked, and Bank of America managed to stay independent.
Which leads us into our final act, Part 4, the modern financial behemoth. Clausen's aggressive restructuring saved the bank, and that paved the way for a euphoric, frenzied-like period of massive mergers in the 1990s. The bank is expanding rapidly, tangling commercial banking with investment banking, operating under the firm belief that bigger is always safer.
But as we all know, that unchecked, unscrupulous growth was a ticking time bomb. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, Bank of America was wildly exposed. They were completely weighed down by incredibly toxic mortgage assets from their acquisition of Countrywide Financial. Add to that the fact they were practically forced by the government to absorb a failing Merrill Lynch just to stabilize the broader market, and the bank was pushed right to the absolute brink. In the end, they only survived total collapse thanks to a staggering $45 billion government bailout.
Following the crash, new CEO Brian Moynihan steps up, famously securing a massive $5 billion lifeline from legendary investor Warren Buffett just to restore some market confidence. Fast forward to today, and financially speaking, the bank is back to reporting robust earnings. But for the everyday consumer, it's a much darker picture. Today's customers are dealing with a daily barrage of fraudulent transactions, unauthorized accounts, withheld rewards, excessive fees, and agonizingly slow customer service. The bank is so bogged down by the sheer mass of its own bureaucracy that it's constantly getting hit with regulatory fines.
Amedeo Giannini built this incredible empire on a foundation of unshakable character. He was the guy looking out for the marginalized people that big banking simply ignored. But looking at the massive, modern behemoth it is today, we have to ask ourselves, has a century of relentless corporate growth, aggressive accounting, and bureaucratic expansion destroyed the very foundation of trust that Bank of America was actually built upon? Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that.